Hey everybody, good evening. It's Ben with Broad Shoulders Farm, and it's almost midnight on Tuesday, but I wanted to take a quick moment here before I go to bed just to answer some folks' questions that they had about what's going on with our flock and our Marek's disease outbreak. And first, though, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much. It has been a very emotional few weeks, and today was a very emotional day. Just so many of you reaching out and offering emotional support and financial support and moral support, and it's really appreciated. I'm so grateful. Thank you all very much. Just a lot going on, and a lot of tears. Some of them have been really joyful and out of gratitude. So, okay, thank you. All right, I'm not going to dwell on that too long. I wrote down just a couple of the questions that I've seem to be the most frequently asked questions, and I'll probably do another one of these. I feel like doing a series of these as we work our way through our Marek's outbreak here with our flock. But I didn't want to go to bed tonight without posting some answers, and I'm just kind of addressing some things. So one of the first things that people asked is, what happened? And I will tell you, so I guess in early June, I had a bird that stopped being able to use its legs, which is a very classic sign of Marek's. At the time, I didn't know that. I knew of Marek's, but I didn't really know a lot about Marek's, and that is my own ignorance. And I really should have known more so that I could be on top of it, especially when you get such a kind of a classic presentation of symptoms. But be that as it may, so I think that was early June or late May. And for the longest time, I thought it was a slipped tendon, which is actually a nutritional problem. Believe it or not, you might think that it is like a physical problem, where the bird somehow damages its legs, and you almost always see it in juvenile chickens. And but no, it's not. It actually is related to nutrition, and that's kind of what I thought it might be. So I was changing up the diet a little bit, making sure that I isolated this little one, and that she was getting extra nutrition and what I thought she needed. And eventually I decided to take her to the vet. We found a really nice chicken, a small animal vet who also sees chickens, Dr. Victoria Shorter in Chatham, Virginia, at the Chatham Animal Clinic. Way to go, Dr. Victoria. She's been really great. And she looked at the little one and said that she thought it was slip tendon, and recommended that we change up her nutrition a little bit. And that was like June 15th or something. She said, okay. So then I looked, and I had a follow-up appointment with her, I think like on the 26th of June. And I may have even mentioned it to her on the phone. And I was talking about, how that little bird was doing. And I said that, I mentioned that I had also had quite a few little birds go lame this season, which is true. This spring, I have had, it's been a rough spring for chickens on the farm. In particular, the grow-out pens, the new juveniles, not my older and established flock, but the new birds that we've gotten that spend time in the brooder, and then they go into the grow-out pens, and then they eventually get transferred over to the main flocks, and they bolster them, and eventually will replace them as our older birds, who at the end of this year will be going into their third year, or next year they'll be going into their third year. That's usually when most laying hens start to lay less and less. They cut back. They kind of age out. They enter henopause. Many people process their birds at that time. We don't do that. They get to go to work exclusively on the composting operation, but that's a whole other conversation. But anyhow, so I just mentioned it as an offhand remark to Dr. Victoria, and she said, really, if you have multiple birds with these similar symptoms, you may have Marek's disease. And then I said, So that kind of got the ball rolling, and shortly after that, I took one of the birds into the one of the state animal labs, testing labs here in Virginia. The one in Lynchburg is just about an hour north of me, so I drove a bird up there for a necropsy, and the preliminary results came back Marek's, and the histology, the like microscopic looking at things, came back a week later, and they said definitely Marek's. So I knew that I had a really bad situation on my hands. So most folks wanted to know, so what is Marek's? So Marek's is, and I'm reading up on this stuff, so I'm not an expert, but it is a disease. It's ubiquitous. It's kind of like coccidiosis. It's out there in the environment, and the right conditions can trigger it. And I think our super wet spring, combined with the confinement of the juveniles being in the grow-out pens, combined with the just the bedding getting muddy. I know I went for several weeks there where I did not have any fresh bedding, and it was really frustrating. But I just couldn't get it in place. So definitely some mismanagement on my part led to this outbreak. That's how I'm thinking about it now when I go back and look at it. But Marek's is like, I think one of the doctors, I've spoken with a Virginia state poultry expert in, I can't remember where she is, maybe in Harrisonburg, or she may be down in Abington. But then I've also spoken with the doctor who performed the necropsies at the state lab a couple times. I probably annoyed them so often by calling them and such, but it's kind of, it's like a herpes virus. So it's extremely contagious. It's transferred in the dander. So chickens put off all kinds of like fluff and dander and little microscopic skin and feather sheddings, I guess you would call it, and also in their feces. So especially when you have birds in the same place for a long time, you really have a potential for that. And if a bird is infected, it's very easy for that bird to infect everybody else. It typically infects juvenile birds, so not really in the brooder, but usually around the 8 to 12 week range, and that's mostly what I've been seeing. The older a bird gets, the less likely it is to succumb to symptoms. And the classic, there are four, I think, different kind of main strains with a different kind of angle of attack, I guess is the way I'm thinking about it right now. So one of them causes neurological issues where the birds will have seizures. One of them primarily affects the eyes. These are kind of early classic symptoms. The mortality rate for Marek's is very, very high. Very high. And another classic symptom is just kind of dropsy. The birds just kind of go limp, and you'll find them. And the classic splayed legs is a classic symptom that you'll see. And that's what I had started to see, just birds who were fine the day before, and then the next day they, were just kind of down, and they struggled to move their legs. And it's really heartbreaking because, I probably have a tendency to anthropomorphize the birds more than the average farmer. But I just felt it was very clear that they were confused. They're like, why don't my legs work? They worked yesterday and they don't work now. And they're very young birds, and it's rough. But essentially, Marek's promotes all kinds of lymphomas that develop in the bird, in the organs and in the soft tissue. And one of the primary areas that are affected are the sciatic nerves, where you get these tumors building up on them and pressing the nerve, and that is where you start to see the leg problems and the lameness issues. So that's, as I was saying earlier, kind of classic symbols or symptoms. So that's kind of what it does. I'm still researching and talking to people who have birds and people who have Marek's positive flocks and people who have dealt with this, about what happens to a bird who is crippled by it but still alive. I have a few still here with me that I am doing, some kind of like ICU, some intensive care with them, because their appetites are good, they're very alert, they're very chatty, they're just kind of paralyzed with respect to their legs for the most part. So in general, I try, I don't always succeed, but I try to work with the birds where if they are interested in eating, I am interested in treating. And that's not always the case. It's not always possible, but it's what I try for. So, when they still seem very bright, but they just can't move their legs, I have to start making quality of life decisions, and that's a whole other video. But yeah, I'll talk about that in another one. I'm on a special needs poultry group on Facebook that's been really helpful with Cordelia. If you notice, Cordelia is our special needs chicken. She's our little crossbeak. And that group has shown me lots and lots of animals that I would think probably would have very low quality of life, and that should be euthanized. But I see people coming up with really, really clever and caring and thoughtful solutions for those little souls. And so I'm kind of curious about the birds that have been affected by Marek's here who are still with us. In most of the birds that I've dealt with, they just kind of pass within hours of me noticing. I lost a little guy today, and it's been kind of rough because the grow-out pen is where the bantams are and the brooder is, and it's always been a joy to go in there and see how everybody's doing. And this fall, it's become like, well, now physically because of biosecurity, it's the last thing I check on. But it's also sometimes like I go in and I'm just like holding my breath as I'm looking around for bodies. But we're working on getting everybody moved out, getting that whole area sanitized, and moving the birds who are showing some resistance onto fresh pasture. They can't be integrated with the main flocks that they were originally intended to bolster and ultimately replace. They can't. They represent a real threat to them. So even if I have, my list of commonly asked questions. Computer went to sleep. I've been talking too long. So even if a bird seems to have not been affected by the Marek's but grew up in the Marek's pen, that bird is kind of forever presumed to be an asymptomatic carrier. And that's one of the biggest problems is even the birds that I have who come through this and look healthy, it's like they're always going to have the power of the touch of death, with them, because they will forever be shedding it in their droppings and in their dander. So it's the damnedest thing. So anyhow, that's a little bit about what Marek's is, how do birds get it. It's ubiquitous in the environment, stress, wet conditions. The heat actually helps eliminate it. That was one of the things that the state poultry expert told me. Someone had asked me, what do I do with the bodies when I'm done with them? The bodies are burned, though interestingly enough, according to the state poultry specialists, legally, if you double bag them, you can dispose of their bodies in the trash. Our birds are out at the farm. and they either get buried or incinerated out there. Interestingly enough, a bird who succumbs to Marek's is still, and this is just a technical oddity, this is not anything that I'm doing, is still fine to eat. But it typically affects juvenile birds, so, there's not going to be much to work with there. But anyhow, someone asked, can my ducks or my dogs or can I or children or other people get it? So Marek's is specific to gallinaceous species. I think chickens are Gallus gallus domesticus. And so the answer is no. They actually developed the Marek's vaccine through like turkey herpes because it's like similar but not the same. And there's some anecdotal stories that I've tracked down from a few breeders who say that they always keep turkeys with their chickens in order to prevent Marek's. I found no scientific confirmation of that. And if anything, if I had chickens and turkeys together, my big fear would be that the chickens would give the turkeys blackhead, but that's another thing. So I can't get it. People can't get it. The dog can't get it. The ducks and the geese can't get it. The guineas, I think, can get it. The state poultry expert actually said she would have to look that up because she wasn't sure. She said it would be unusual. And out of the guineas who were raised and continue to be in that area of the farm right now, I did lose one suddenly one day, and that makes me think Marek's, but I wasn't able to get a necropsy done on it. So I don't know. I remember someone asked if the eggs are safe. So the answer, according to all the scientific information, is yes, the eggs are safe for human consumption. That's not really an issue with this group yet because, as I said, most of these birds are, let's see, the oldest birds would have arrived in late February, so March, April, May, June, July, 5 months. So they're getting close to the point of lay. But none of the birds who have been infected or exposed or who are probably asymptomatic carriers, I must now and forever moving forward with these birds assume to be, are laying. So it's kind of an issue, kind of not an issue. But according to all the scientific experts that I've talked with, it's not a problem. It doesn't really do anything that way to the eggs. Just a couple quick things and I'll wrap this up. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk this long and I got to get to bed. People have asked a little bit about the vaccines. So I'll do a whole other conversation about the vaccines, about why I didn't vaccinate. The short answer is every source that I trusted and read, none of those people vaccinated. And there are some reasons to vaccinate. There are some reasons to not vaccinate. And just, it perfectly summed up. I was talking to a group of breeders on Facebook who've dealt with all kinds of things. And literally like one comment above the other. The first person was like, I've been raising poultry for 50 years and I vaccinate and never had a problem. Literally the person underneath that said, I've been raising poultry for 50 years. I didn't even know there was a vaccine for this, but I've never had a problem. So your mileage may vary. But anyhow, I'll talk about that at another point. How do you control it? The plan that I'm going forward with based on what the state poultry expert told me is trying to get everybody out of the infected area as quickly as possible and get them set up in a different spot while the infected area gets a deep clean, gets sanitized. There's a chemical that zoos use that is safe for the animals, but that will kill the Marek's virus as well as a whole bunch of other stuff. It's called oxine. I actually have it on hand right now. I got a gallon of it off of Amazon, and I've been talking with a couple of different groups on how you use it, how best to use it, and other things. But the state veterinarian even said if you can just let the whole thing lie fallow for 2 weeks to, even better, she said, a month, it should really kind of take care of it. So I'm going to do a bit more than that, but that is the plan. I'm not going to burn the Bantam run. I'm not going to raise it to the ground. Lots of folks will talk about, the Marek's is transportable by the wind, and, you have to burn the whole thing and salt the earth there, and nothing can grow there for 7 years. It's not quite that bad, but it is kind of doom and gloom for some folks. But we move our flocks around. This happened in the only location on our farm where the birds stay put, which really sucks because that's where I had built the brooder, and it's where the Bantam run is, and it's where I was getting ready to build the new ICU. And all those projects are going to get mixed up a little bit while the whole thing gets sanitized. But moving forward, the birds who are asymptomatic, likely carriers, and there's probably 60 to 70 of them still remaining, are going to be set up in their own chickshaws and their own electronet fencing and their own energizer, and they're going to be rotated through pasture just like the other birds are, but in a very different part of the orchard. They're probably going to stay completely on the west side, and the main flocks will be over on the east side, and that's where the division is going to be probably moving forward. All the chickens that you know and love and that I've met through the Facebook and videos and YouTube channel and Instagram, Dorcas, Pearl, Mr. P, Mrs. Peacock, Chow, just a bunch of them, all the Morans, Boudreaux, Louis, they're all fine. They're all on a very far away. Now I myself can be a carrier, so I can carry that dander into the other birds groups, but my main flocks are more than 2 years old now, and there's kind of after a bird is 18 to 24 months, the state veterinarian has told me that it would be very unusual for it to succumb to Marek's. So, but she also said I wouldn't integrate the flocks. So I'm going to go with that. One of the consultants, one of the state people that I spoke with said something about, well, as old as your main flocks are, you could bring these in and, there's maybe 5% losses. Well, out of 100 birds, that's 5 birds, which I guess from an emotional standpoint doesn't sound like a lot. But from an emotional standpoint, do I get to pick the 5? There's a couple of birds in there who are kind of jerks, but I don't wish them ill. But, if the 5 wind up being, Pearl, Mrs. Peacock, Mr. P, my Buckeye, any of the Tessas, Dorcas, that's a pretty high price. So anyhow, that's what we're going to do. I think that's most of the questions that I got. If you stayed this long, that's awesome. I hope it wasn't too boring. I'm sorry I'm really low energy, but I'm tired. I've got like a cup of chamomile tea here with the Golden Girls, and I'm going to go to bed. Someone did ask, how am I doing personally? And as I said earlier, I'm doing okay. It's been very emotional. Today was especially emotional because, I kind of talked about this out in the open, and the support from probably anybody watching this, and a lot of my other friends and family on social media and Facebook and YouTube channel and real life has just been really overwhelming. I broke down a lot today, like I said, in gratitude. So I'm doing okay, but there is a lot of anxiety every day going to check on them, because it's like, which little bird that I know and have loved now for a few months is going to present itself basically for euthanasia. And that's rough. we chemically euthanized a few of them here on the farm last week with the vet. Not Dr. Shorter, but Dr. Pravia, my mother-in-law, who is a small animal veterinarian as well. We took some birds to the clinic, and it went very smoothly, but it was still really hard because I just feel like they're still so confused. You know, they're young and they're like, "Oh, my life, I don't know what's going on with my legs," and then you just have to kind of say goodbye to them and try to do better the next time. So I'm doing okay. In the grand scheme of things, I'm doing really, really well. I'm worried about my birds, and I'm worried about the farm moving forward. But I think I can see a path now. I can see a way through, and that's what I'm going to focus on. And there's a lot going on with the garden and other stuff. So I'm not going to let this whole thing define the farm. But I do want to talk more about it in case there's other folks who struggle with it. So that's where we are. It's after midnight. I need to go to bed so I can get up again tomorrow very early. And bake for the midweek market. There will be muffins. Okay, if you have follow-up questions, anything, please feel free to post them. I'm happy to talk about them. I'll try and do a few more of these as we go along. Thank you very much, and good night.